the DG of GCIS, Ms. Pumla Williams. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Let me also greet our Deputy Minister and all the officials who are here, and also to recognize those who have joined us in being in watching this press briefing, who are very important stakeholders in our Department of Higher Education and Training. Our senior management, the CEO of NSFAS, the leadership of the Universities South Africa, the South African Union of Students and the TVET College Students Association, the TVET College Governors Council, leadership from unions, and ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity to first thank my cabinet colleagues and the president of our country, President Ramaphosa, for providing funding support under trying circumstances to keep the commitment that we have made as government during Minister Mbowene's budget speech on the 24th of February 2021. And I quote that government remains committed to ensuring that deserving students are supported through higher education, unquote. Thanks for Minister Ntshabeni for underlining this as part of the cabinet decision. Before I outline the implications of this and the details on this commitment by government, let me also start by reflecting, as Cabinet has done, on the tragic incident that took place yesterday in Braamfontein, where a man lost his life in the midst of a public protest. I also join in expressing my own sincere condolences to the family and friends, and I have directed Wits University Council and management and the relevant law enforcement agencies to provide us with an explanation on how this tragedy happened. As Minister Ntshabeni has said, Cabinet met yesterday and discussed the matter of the funding shortfall, which I had reported earlier in the week. And the particular issue under discussion was shortfall in the funding for the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, for 2021, which has delayed NSFAS in being able to communicate funding decisions to students and institutions for first-year students. Cabinet agreed that funding should be reprioritized from the budget of the Department of Higher Education and Training in order to ensure that all deserving NSFAS qualifying students are able to receive funding support for the 2021 academic year. Further reprioritization can only be considered as part of the medium-term budget process of government, which takes place later this year. This decision has been taken in the context of funding cuts and the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Following this decision, NSFAS will be able to release funding, and the registration process at public university can indeed now continue as planned. Non-NSFAS qualifying students have been affected by these delays, as universities have agreed to extend the registration period to ensure that students without funding decisions would not be prevented from accessing a place that they qualified. We agreed with the Vice Chancellors on Monday that the registration period is extended for first-time entering students until the end of next week. Cabinet also agreed that a comprehensive review of the student funding policy of government is urgently required, and has instructed that the Department of Higher Education and Training immediately commence with this work and report back to Cabinet. The purpose of this process will be to look carefully at the funding requirements to support students in financial need in the post-school education and training system, to model the holistic requirements of students, including those from poor and working class backgrounds, as well as from those in the category we refer to as the missing middle. Government is very concerned about the issue of growing student debt in the system, as are the universities. This is an issue that will also be considered as part of the policy review that Cabinet has decided upon. Some of the demands that are being received by government and universities relate to the debt of students who may not be funded by NSFAS, but who are struggling to register because they have not been able to pay debts, but are doing well academically. In some instances, universities have already made arrangements with some students to sign acknowledgement of debt agreements. In this regard, I will be engaging with the university leadership to explore ways in which we can try to ensure that final year students who are also performing well and are on track to graduate are able to register for their final year through such acknowledgement of debt arrangements. What should be clear from the above is that government is firmly committed to implement the policy of providing fee-free and fully subsidized higher education support to students from working class and poor background, whilst also putting a sustainable mechanism in place to support students from the so-called missing middle income brackets. I will now provide further details about NSFAS funding for 2021, as well as on the start of the 2021 academic year. As I have said, NSFAS will now be able to release funds for new students qualifying for NSFAS bursary support. As I already said on Monday, continuing students who meet the qualifying criteria have already been allowed to register, those who are recipients of NSFAS. This process is extremely urgent, as some universities are already starting with their academic programs and others will be commencing soon. I appeal to institutions and to NSFAS to ensure that this process is completed as smoothly as possible. I would also like to appeal for calm at our institutions of higher learning. Where there are matters of dispute and grievances, structures are in place for SRCs and institutional management to engage, and I urge that student leaders and institutional leaders make use of these mechanisms to resolve problems amicably. We cannot afford at this time to enjoy disruption to the 2021 academic year, which is already starting later than usual due to the extended 2020 academic year and the delayed National Senior Certificate results. The 2020 academic year was a difficult year for everyone. Students and staff in our public institutions had to adjust to remote forms of teaching and learning, and institutions had to manage the academic year during different phases of the national lockdown. I commend the institutional management teams, staff, and student leaders in our institutions for their hard work during the 2020 academic year. I also wish to extend my special congratulations to the students who continued with their academic programs despite the challenges of COVID-19. I also acknowledge that yesterday I received communication from the South African Union of Students, which represents all our public university SRCs, outlining a number of demands of students. I will respond to this communication as soon as I'm able to do so. And as the ministry, we're committed to engaging with student leadership as well as with other stakeholders. Now that the issue of the funding shortfall has been addressed, we will then be able to finalize the funding NSFAS bursary guidelines for university students, and these will be finalized within the next week and released to institutions as soon as possible. It should be noted that the changes are being kept to a minimum in order not to affect the administration of the DHET bursary scheme in public institutions. However, it is important that I clarify the core parameters of NSFAS funding policy for 2021. NSFAS funding is provided primarily for the funding of students completing a first undergraduate qualification. In past, NSFAS has provided funding for some limited second qualifications in key areas. Students who are already funded on this program will be able to continue as long as they meet the academic criteria. However, there will be no funding available for new entrants on second or postgraduate qualifications, as postgraduate programs ordinarily are funded through application to the National Research Foundation. The only exception is that students who have completed higher certificates and gain access to a degree or diploma program are able to receive funding if they meet the academic criteria. The department will continue to work with institutions and other funding agencies to expand the funding opportunities for students who do not qualify for NSFAS, in particular in scarce skills areas. In this regard, we will also engage further with the SETAs and the National Skills Fund, where support may be available for programs in particular areas, and indeed also to address areas of postgraduate funding where possible. In short, government is able, through the SETAs and the National Skills Fund, to provide bursaries in scarce skills areas, even for students who would ordinarily not be recipients of NSFAS. The following is applicable in relation to the DHET NSFAS bursary scheme for 2021. Tuition fee and accommodation fee costs are provided for in line with the guidelines of the Department of Higher Education training. To the CPI-linked wide of 4.7% for tuition and 6.7% for accommodation. Institutions must note that no funding can be provided by NSFAS in excess of these incomes, and neither can such costs be passed on to NSFAS bursary recipients. I wish to thank the university councils and manage their understanding in adhering to these conditions. I must also urge that all our universities must stick to the agreed enrollment plan in line with the ministerial statement on enrollment planning for 2020-2025. I will provide further details below. All NSFAS qualifying students on the DHET grant scheme, that is, those students who were registered prior to 2018, will be subject to the funding cap of 98,700. In respect of student allowances for students on the DHET bursary scheme, the following is applicable. All students receive the learning material allowance, which remains at 5,400 for the 12th year. This allowance can be utilized by students to purchase electronic devices to support their study, in line with the applicable university policies and schemes. Some institutions will make use of the NSFAS process for the provision of laptops to students. The living allowance, which is provided to full-time students in contact study, remains at 15,000 Rand for the 2021 academic year, and the incidental allowance remains at 2,900 Rands for students for the students who are receiving the 15,000 Rands. The incidental allowance is included there. This is provided to students who live in catering accommodation where their meal costs are covered through the bursary. UNISA and distance learning students who are taking an equivalent full-time course load and who qualify for NSFAS will also be eligible for the 2,900 Rands incidental allowance. The travel allowance, which is provided to students who live at home or in accommodation that is not accredited and therefore do not receive an accommodation allowance, remains at a maximum of 7,500 rand for the 2021 academic year. In respect of the allowances provided, the policy provisions outlined in the 2020 guidelines will remain in place for 2021. I must indicate that the student funding policy of government, which is provided to support students from poor and working class background, that is from families earning less than 350,000 rands per year, is a comprehensive one because it provides support for both academic access and success. We know that while access to appropriate support for students in full-time study is one of many factors that support student success, it is indeed one of the most important. This is why government has committed such substantial funding to support students in public TVET colleges and universities. I do need to say, Program Director, that for instance, universities in 2018 were supported with 17 billion rands of NSFAS bursary. And 2020, it went up to 28.2 billion rand, almost doubling it in 2 years. NSFAS funding in TVET colleges doubled between 2018, where it was 3 billion rands, and in 2020, it was 6.5 billion rands. This shows government's commitment to supporting students from poor and working class backgrounds to attend universities and colleges. In many respects, student support, by the way, exceeds the earnings of many workers earning either at minimum wage or even below minimum wage. Government also has to ensure that it is able to meet other critical social obligations, including social grants, support for school nutrition programs, training of unemployed youth, and effective support to the health system. I do acknowledge that this period has been stressful for many prospective students wishing to enter post-school institutions as well as for their families. I hope that today what I have outlined will provide some assurance of our commitment of government to addressing the funding needs of students from poor and working class background. I look forward to a successful and peaceful academic year, and once again urge all stakeholders to ensure constructive engagement around all issues they may face. I need to say this, Honorable Program Director, before I conclude, because this is important. That 578,000 learners wrote the grade 12 exam in 2020. Of these, 210,820 achieved a pass at bachelor entry and 150,600 at diploma level. The available spaces for first-time entering students for 2021 in the public university system is 184,315 for the system as a whole. I am also pleased to announce that through the National Skills Fund and the Agricultural SETA, we will be providing for the first time bursaries to approximately 4,000 students who are studying at agricultural colleges in our country using NSFAS criteria. Such students are not being funded by NSFAS. This funding will ensure that we continue to step up support for black small-scale farmers, as well as to support and train agricultural extension officers. We will be working closely with the Department of Agriculture and Agrarian Reform to also work towards restoring physical infrastructure in agricultural colleges. In conclusion, let me state that our vision and mission of a Department of Higher Education and Training is that of a South Africa in which we have a differentiated and fully inclusive post-school system that allows access to relevant post-school education and training. With these words, I wish you all a safe, healthy, and peaceful academic year. Let us all remember to keep all COVID-19 health and safety protocols intact. Thank you very much.
Thank